Welcome back to New Amsterdam, right to the podcast for creatives. It is I, the mayor, Flobo Boyce, in the mayor's office, hanging with people who are doing the dang thing. And you guys know me. I'm a comic book nerd. For those of you in the visual representation of the podcast, I still keep my Green Lantern behind me on my dental. But my guest today is a comic book fiend aficionado. And can I say nerd? Is that still a thing? Please welcome Michael Regina from Read the Freaking Comics. How's it going, sir?
Hey, thanks for having me. Doing really well. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. The first things first, man. The name. Like, why? How did you come up with the name of the platform as Read the Freaking Comics?
Read the freaking comics. So I used to work in IT. So speaking of being a nerd, and in IT there is a common parlance called "read the freaking manual" without the word "freaking" in it, with the
Mhm.
actual word. And essentially, what that means is like if you don't know, read up about it. And
Right.
so, all these years later, I reading comics and just going on Reddit and watching people either complain or comment about things that, oh, this never happened before, or this wasn't done before. Why are they doing it this way in this movie or this way in this TV show? I just said, you know what, you guys really got to read the freaking comics, man, before you can complain. Learn your lore, understand where they're coming from, and that's really where it came from and how it was born.
I think you kind of opened up a can of worms with that line of thinking because I really felt like, as someone who was a classic nerd, before being a nerd
Hmm.
was cool, I got myself in a bunch of fights because I mean, my particular nerdum was Archie comics, but I was into superhero
All
comics
right.
a little bit later. Jughead is my homeboy, but it felt like about 15 years ago, nerddom got co-opted, and so there was almost like two tracks of nerdom. It was like the pop stuff on TV and movies, and then there was the source
Mhm.
material. I mean, how did you navigate that? Was that something where it's like I respect that, but is that really the whole thing? Is it a different lane? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, I really believe that pop stuff is a completely different lane, and if that's your lane, that is fine. And if you're enjoying that and you're living it, and it is the only thing you're ever going to be exposed to, that's fine. Live that life. That is all good. But really, like I said, where the term "read the freaking comics" comes from are people who are in that lane, but then don't bother to dip into where the lore comes from, or don't bother to like look into this kind of stuff before they start complaining about stuff that they hear about that is actually lore that has been set precedents before, that they're just complaining about. Like, oh, why is Wonder Woman? Sorry, why is She Hulk talking to the camera? That's a Deadpool thing. What's going on there? That kind of stuff. And so it's sort of like, you know what, you just got to get deep into it and understand when you're talking about the source material, about this stuff has already been set 9 times out of 10. Now,
Yeah.
that being said, obviously there's lanes that the pop stuff goes into that is completely new. And I'm of the philosophy of like, look, if you're enjoying it, and if it's not for you, then that's fine. You can walk away from it. But if you're enjoying it, have fun, enjoy it, and just
Yeah.
go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sticking with the Archie comic example, Riverdale is not my Archie. Okay. So
Exactly.
yeah, I don't these kids nowadays and their murder mysteries. So talk to me about a particular instance where that was something you realized that your fandom had ran a little bit deeper. And I'll give you my example.
Mhm.
I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of Superman. He's my third favorite superhero of all time, behind Green Lantern John Stewart and the artist formerly known as Captain Marvel Shazam. But growing up, I had to deal with the fact that they would say, "Oh, he's boring," or "He has no weaknesses," and I'm like, "But, Mister Misfit," and then there was lead, and then and I felt like, oh my goodness, if you read the books, you'll know. Was there a moment like that for you where you're like, are you kidding me? What do you mean this guy sucks? He's great. Check out the books. Or what was the original moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was definitely during the peak of Marvel, where people were just talking about Iron Man, and the death of Iron Man is going to be like the loss of everything on across Marvel, and Iron Man was the centerpiece for Marvel, and it's kind of like, guys, you have to go back and like Iron Man wasn't the be all end all of Marvel Comics, right? He was a character, he was an important character, important member of the Avengers, but I really think where the gravity of Iron Man came from was really in the MCU, and Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, and just the way that he was one of the first MCU films, and how everything kind of revolved around him. That kind of led people to think, oh no, that's exactly how it is in the comics. Like Iron Man is like the be all end all. when in
Oh yeah.
reality there's a lot of other lore out there, and he's just kind of one of the Avengers. Not necessarily the most important, not even the top one during the peak periods of for Marvel in the 90s. Iron Man was definitely not there. It was definitely X-Men and Spider-Man. But yeah, that's where it kind of got back to like, hey, these things aren't exactly the same. But yeah, and you should really just read the freaking comics.
Yeah, yeah, you hit the nail on the head because okay, as you could tell, I'm a huge DC guy, but the only
Hmm.
Marvel hero I actually liked was Iron Man because I hated Batman so much. Batman's my least favorite superhero of all time. I feel like if I want a rich asshole to be a guy, I was a Iron Man guy, but he was such a deep cut for a long time that no one really knew it. It was almost like you knew Ball if you knew somebody who knew who Shellhead was, and now it's like, oh well, whatever. But that's just me being a salty person. But let's talk about the YouTube channel. Read the freaking
Yeah.
comics. Fantastic library of videos. I'm going to start off the top level first. What do you decide makes the cut that's worth a deep dive? I mean, I know you have so many options about so many different arcs. How do you approach attacking which ones you want to put on the channel?
So the basis of the show is essentially deep diving into my initial collection of comics that I collected when I was younger. So these would be mid 80s to like mid 90s, right? And so what I do is I take that period, which is my period, right? I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening, and say, okay, of those collections that I have, which ones do I think are worthy of a deep dive or even looking into a little bit deeper? And so that's where it initially started from. What I found later on was that I didn't have as much variety as I maybe recollected or really wanted to bring to the YouTube show, because my guy was Spider-Man, definitely. I was a Marvel guy, even though I love DC. So I had a lot of Spider-Mans and a lot of Avengers. And I said, well, I don't want to just repeat the same character over and over again. So I've been going out there and buying some one-off issues. And what's great about buying these one-off issues is that some of these titles I'm not even fully familiar with. So I get
Yeah,
to learn as well as I go along. But
yeah.
that was the initial basis of saying, hey, I'm gonna just pick from the lore I know, from literally from the box of comics that I have, and just randomly go through them. But then I decided to add a little bit more variety to that. And the other thing that I want to do is definitely uh, go through the pages themselves and kind of take a step back in time and look at the advertisements, look at the people who created the comic, what's their background, that kind of thing as well. And that's
Yeah.
why it's the most fun. So, because I definitely have more graphic novels than I do individual comics, but now I'm getting back into, hey, I'm going to buy a lot of smaller lots of individual comics because all that history is there, all that advertising and all that fun stuff is already there, and so I get to enjoy that on a whole new level. So yeah, that's why I choose the ones I choose.
It's funny you mentioned advertising. I was cracking up a bit because when someone says comic book ads, the first thing I think about are the X-ray glasses, which I got that didn't work, and of course turtle pies, which sounds so gross. It was drawn gross, and when you bought one, you're like, "Hey, this is gross." They tried to warn me I shouldn't have
Yeah,
bought a turtle pie. Straight from the sewer to you was the actual slogan,
exactly.
which is pretty gross. So okay, so during I asked this about creators. I know we are all artists and we try to be inspired from other people. But what was that a thing you were thinking about before on the creating side before you made your own videos? Did you like study other creators like Linkara and those issues? Or you say, look, I'm just gonna do me. I'm gonna go head first. I'm gonna give you full on Michael, and then whatever happens, happens.
It was a bit of that, yeah. So I had definitely had guys like Buscema and some other artists that were my go-to guys that I was like, I love these guys. I collected them when I was younger and went for those kind of artists. And I really want to showcase them. And now it's a bit about, yes, I've showcased a few of these artists like, Dennis O'Neil, some of these editors and writers as well that I really, really love. But now it's more, excuse me. But now it's more along the lines of, I want to highlight artists over AI. And that's become like a major thing for me as well, right? So wherever you land on the AI scope right now, I always feel that, human beings are better off when they're using AI for other tools and it allows them time to draw and be creative. rather than having the AI actually beat the creative portion, right? So that's part of my mission as well. And the tag at the end of every video is, hey, AI is really useful for a lot of things, but not necessarily for replacing artists and creating art. So that's really why I sort of want to highlight all these different artists and writers and editors who really contributed to the scope of comics, and give them a little bit of love as well.
So I'm gonna challenge you on that one there, only because I say I agree or disagree, but we've had guests on the show that are all over the AI spectrum, which sounds like it's a bad thing, like it's a club. Welcome to the AI spectrum, bro. But yeah, some people are kind of all for it. Hey, look, there's so many jobs that didn't exist before. I mentioned my other episodes. My dad's cousin was a TV repairman. That job doesn't exist. Creative jobs can be cycled out. And then the other side of it is like, hey, look, AI, if it's going to be using references from things that already existed, is already on bad ground. It's in bad faith. You said that you really understand the more technical side of things, but there's going to be a time, I would think, when a giant risk-averse company will probably rely on AI for writing or creative works. I mean, is it coming? Are we doom and glooming it? Like, what do you think on that end?
So on the other side of my life, my 9 to 5 job is actually in advertising. And so on the advertising side of business, they're definitely using AI already, from creating content, short form, long form content, videos, creative writing, all that kind of thing is definitely being used in the advertising space. And so I definitely think that it's going to be something that is coming to the fore when it gets to the creative space, gets to creative comic writing, creative comic creation, so to speak, right? I think that's definitely something that's going to come to the fore. When it comes to trying to generate original content from this AI tool, I think that's a really difficult line to parse, because AI by itself is inherently is a machine that is learning, and it learns from examples. And so the only thing you can do, and feel free to debate this, I'm no expert, of course, the only thing you can do is give it examples and then say, output me something that is maybe not exactly like that, but output me something now that you've can create from the learnings you've created. So if you give it everything that Todd McFarlane has ever drawn in his life or written or anything else from, and it's solely that input of Todd McFarlane, I'm using it as example,
Mhm.
and then say, okay, now create a whole new character and draw me a 26-page comic, and I'll give you carte blanche to do whatever you want, AI computer. It's going to inherently give you something that looks and sounds and feels like Todd McFarlane. And so, but it's a net new IP, it's a net new character, whatever you want to call it. So is that net new? Is that a new creative piece, or is that something that has just been recycled from what it already knows, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's my sort of feeling about it, where humans can actually come and create things wholly new, um, from a blank page, bringing in their own experiences, but not necessarily saying, I'm going to lean on what I've learned and create something that looks the same. I'm going to lean on what I've learned, but create something wholly new, net new out of this. That's where the human element is versus the AI element.
Sure.
But I put it to you to let me, see the other side of the coin of that.
Well, look, I just for full disclosure, my day job is I'm a master of ceremonies, right? And so I'm a wedding DJ, I'm an auctioneer, I host podcasts. Like I feel like AI has already taken my jobs, and if there's anyone that should be upset, it should be me. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I go, people who are employing AIs understand for now that there's going to be a limited response of what you can get. Like when I am trying to make a design for my t-shirt, yeah, I'm going to conscript an artist because I want to have that face to face and get it right, for example. But I'll be honest with you, when I'm blogging for my 200-word blog that I know 8 people are going to read, like I don't have the budget to put on to something like that, that kind of art. Not saying it's wrong or whatever. And I always do a disclaimer. I feel guilty doing it, but I do think it's coming. There's so many DJs I meet at DJ summits that go, AI can't replace me. And it's like, well, if somebody wants a live person there saying I got a human being doing it, it won't. If someone's like, I'm having a pool party and I need a 2-hour mix, yeah, look over your shoulder. You're going to be out of a job,
Yeah.
buddy.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, right? So,
Yeah.
and if they can develop these AI tools, these machine learning tools, to then say, look, take everything you've learned, but then create something new out of that, that is whole out of whole cloth, something totally new, then I think we're getting beyond that. I don't know if we're there yet, right? So right now we know the tools can say, hey, draw me something that looks like this out of everything, but yeah, I think your point is actually absolutely right, that things are coming in the way AI is developing, how fast it's going. I mean, if you recall just a couple of years back, how an AI video looked. I mean, it looked like a fever dream. It was
Yeah,
it was insane. And these days it's so much better.
right,
So I think that is coming, and it also reminds me of that shift in like the late '80s when comics, and circling back to comics, when comics went from either newsprint to sort of matte or glossy style prints, or artists were going from hand drawn to computer drawn animation. Now the majority of them are working on computers, but the computers are so intuitive to how to that allows them to draw on a
right.
computer, but they're drawing, right? So I think that's where AI is eventually going to get to, where you could say, hey, this is my style, or this is everything I've ever done in the past, but now I need you to help me quickly generate X, Y, and Z in my style. That
Sure.
might be like sort of that meeting point that is sufficient to allow to use AI in that sort of way.
And you're a comic book creator yourself, correct?
No, I'm not a comic book creator myself. I wish I was, but no, I'm not.
Why not, man? Someone as knowledgeable as I've seen these videos, man. Someone that understands character and the motivation as much as you. It's only a matter of time. We're just delaying the inevitable.
I, I think so. I think so. We're gonna try this out. Let's see if I can do a YouTube channel, do
Yeah.
some radio as well, and then we'll add some comic creation in there as well.
I just want to know if you're going to bring back newsprint, but no, I'm with you 100%. So going back to the channel, because I spent many hours last night watching and going through some of the episodes, and the fact that Mosaic got some love. Shout out to the channel.
Yes, I thought you might like that. You mentioned your GL love, so yes,
Yeah,
no,
because I
definitely.
I always tell people like John Stewart is from the comic side has basically lived like my life, young brash guy who was smart but that was kind of reckless. There's a cosmic odyssey moment. That is like the atonement arc, and was paralyzed for a bit, if you want to call that canon, but retcons or whatever. I'm getting out myself. Uh, Talk to me about structure. When you go through an episode of your show, I know script comes first, but any segments you plan, what's the idea when you're trying to go in length? Like, what is the actual craft of the video creation?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I'm in the middle of doing one for Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight #1.
Boo.
Yeah, yeah,
I love your
yeah.
channel. Hate Batman. Just saying.
So essentially what it is I look over the creators first, and I say, okay, do I know enough about these creators, or do I have to learn a little bit? And I try to find out as much information as I can about the creators, but specifically about the creators during the period of time they worked on this comic, right? I already know the stories, although I get a nice refresh because some of these I haven't read in a few years. So then I refresh that. I get that fresh in my head. Start to build out the story about, okay, who these creators are. I do provide a little bit of like feedback on like my thoughts about it. Like, hey, I love this issue, or hey, I've actually done issues where I don't really care for the issue. Where I'm like, hey, this issue's okay, but you could tell it's rushed, or it's not written well, or I don't like the art, that kind of thing. And then I start to look at, okay, is there a value for this, mint condition, sub mint, whatever it is? What are they selling for? And then I do my favorite part, which is the deep dive. So it's not necessarily just a deep dive in the lore, like, this character is from here or that kind of thing. I also just deep dive into fascinating things I find in the comic itself. So, case in point, some of these characters are driving motorcycles. So I tried to find, hey, what kind of motorcycles are these? I went on motorcycle Reddit, which isn't the friendliest place in the world, but was interesting. And I went on motorcycle Reddit and I said, "Hey guys, are these anything that are based on real life?" And was told, "No, they're not, and please leave." But
Oh
that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
story. Uh, but yeah, and I do all kinds of deep dives on that kind of stuff. Interesting things I see here and there. And then I talk about the advertising because, like I said, I'm an advertising guy at heart, and I really find advertising is a real keyhole into the past. what they were advertising, how they were advertising it, what it looks like, what happened to that business maybe, or what happened to that movie that they advertised, how that worked, kind of thing. I really, really love that. And I try to package all that into under 9 minutes,
Mhm.
and try to keep it as succinct as possible. I think I'm usually at between 9 and 12 minutes, depending on how long I blab. Um, and I missed the key element. So when I research all the artists, I actually try to find those artists to see if they're still around, if they have a social presence, and I reach out to them and I say, "Hey, I'm working on this YouTube channel, and I'm working on this issue that you wrote or you drew or you edited. Do you have any memories, recollections, anything you want to say about this issue?" And I've been quite lucky so far that most of the artists that I've found who are still around have offered feedback and have given me quotes that I could use. And those are fascinating as well because you gain little insights into the story. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
So about the advertising situation, is there anything that that blew your mind that we advertise differently than say in the 70s or the 80s or compared to today?
Yeah, since I've been looking at, so I think the oldest comic I have is that I've done so far is 1977, I think.
Yeah.
And so I've done 70s, 80s, 90s, the teens, and I've actually been able to see the progression of the types of advertising that were done in comics and how they've been advertised. And so what you see in sort of the early to mid 80s is a shift away from the X-ray goggles and the Armstrong body ads and the sea monkeys, more into home video releases, into movies, into video games announcements. And then you get really heavy into the 90s. It's all heavy video games and movies. And then later on, after that, it gets into more the publishers advertising their own other titles out there. So I have a
Right.
Dark Horse issue. The only advertisements are for other Dark Horse titles, right? And so yeah, you can really see the progression on how the advertising has shifted, where advertisers have gone, where they've come, and where they've gone into in the comic book industry. So it's really, really fascinating. A lot of candy in the 80s, late 80s was a lot of candy and um,
Yeah.
candy bars and chocolates and all that kind of stuff was being advertised pretty heavily.
My favorite when I go old issue or back issue diving, I would say not so much now, but because they don't really exist now. But in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the cartoon lineups for Saturday morning programming. How like they just they'll
Yeah,
just throw like all the characters from every show together. You're like, oh my god, what a dream team! And it'll just change and evolve. And there's a part of me going, oh, that's definitely 1996. I mean, duh. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
cool
yeah.
vibe.
I've I've been I've been pretty good in when I get new issues. So what I do is I find people selling on eBay or on Facebook, locals selling their lots just for $50 or whatever it is, just a stack full of comics. And when I go get them, before I even crack them open, I try to take a guess as to the year. And I've been pretty good actually nailing down that year. So, this is 1986. I could see based on the cover and the title and the way it looks. I think this is an 86. I crack it open and I'm fairly close.
Yeah.
And then once I'm there and I look at the advertisements, I can tell right away. Like I just have a blast like looking at those ads and like talking about them on the show is a lot of fun too.
Did you have a best or favorite hero of that specific time period, like in the Bronze Age? Like, did you have like a oh man, I was huge into I don't know when I was a kid in the early '90s, I was into Impulse, but Impulse is a very small sliver of the big lore
Mhm.
of comic books.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. So I was your standard Spider-Man guy, right?
Yeah.
So love Spider-Man growing up. My first comic is a Spider-Man. I have it framed around here somewhere. My first Spider-Man comic, and I was a big Spider-Man guy. By the time the '80s started to roll around, I got into the late '80s. I got into Batman, of course. I was of that right age in 1989 when the Batman movie came out. So sorry about. I know you don't want to hear this, but I was like hardcore into Batman,
All I'm saying is he has no
and
powers, man.
a
He's
lot of
just
money.
rich.
And then I got into some other titles like Spawn and Hellboy and a lot of these other guys as I sort of grew into my adulthood, and sort of expanded beyond sort of capes and tights and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely have some of my favorites that I've been very happy to see their evolution, and to see their growth and to see their popularity like explode has been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's funny how there's characters that live with you or stick with you forever, and there's some that kind of
Mhm.
like become like a symbol of the youth, right? Like, cause oh man, when I was a
Oh,
kid, that was my jam. Or
yeah.
when I was in college, I got it back into buying, I guess monthlies, I say weeklies. Got into buying back the monthlies again, and I just aligned with the Rebirth series, the Green Lantern Rebirth series, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh man, it was like it opened up a whole treasure chest of things. But when I was a kid, because you used to go and get our comics at the grocery store. Remember that? Get a comic book at the
Yeah.
grocery store? Oh
Oh
man, I'm
yeah, for
dating
sure.
myself. They're always out of order. You get like one every 3 months, and you're like, well, what happened
Yeah.
there? Who died? Who's that? You know what I mean? I never had
Yeah.
that a
Yeah.
chance to afford to see complete stories, complete arcs until I was about 19 or 20 years old. And it kind of just opened a whole new level of storytelling that wasn't there before. Like when
Mhm.
editor's notes actually made sense as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah. You're
being
like
like
last issue, like last issue. I'm like, oh, I didn't see the last issue.
I
Spoiler
have no
alert.
idea. It wasn't understands at all.
So
Well,
the
there's
yeah, the digital. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. I think you have a more important statement.
The digital. So the digitizing of historic comics has been a real interesting thing as well, right? So both Marvel and DC, they have their unlimiteds and their infinites, I think. And so I'm actually able now to go back and say like, okay, I have this one issue with Iron Man and the Ghost, and I never got the second issue to see what happened. Now I can just do it. I can just scroll through it, and I finally get the resolution of that story, which is a lot of fun.
Worth his weight in gold, to be honest. There
Hmm.
is no pun intended, but there's a lot of ink being spilled about the supposed decline of comics. Basically, people love heroes more or less money wise, but don't want to buy the books. The selling model, the direct to consumer model, is kind of aging, if not outright outdated. As someone who's really into the art form, I mean, what's been your experience? I mean, I can't give the next generation comic book because they're $5 a book now. What's
Hmm.
it been from your perspective? Is it dying? Is it just overblown? What's going on?
So to me, whenever there's a boon in anything, you eventually people already start to see the bust at the end of the boon, right? So saying like, like okay, this is really big. This is happening right now. When's it going to end, and when can we anticipate that ending, and what's going to look like for vendors and companies and all that kind of stuff. So I do see massive shifts in the way people are consuming content. And we just mentioned digital right now. Obviously, we mentioned all the pop stuff previously, where people are, they're consuming their content slightly differently. And as generational shifts occur, people always get nostalgic for what was. And so I think that generational shift from the weeklies and monthlies you just mentioned has already occurred. So it's been the last 10, 15 years. The older generation is getting really fond of looking back, and this includes myself, looking back at their weeklies and maybe purchasing those or buying the digital versions, all that kind of thing. If we take 20 steps, if we take go back 30 years where the shift started going into graphic novels, where that became a major thing, where collected editions, graphic novels, these kind of things started to become more prominent, then we start to say, okay, people are going to start to become more nostalgic for that as well, right? So that leaves the weeklies and monthlies maybe lagging behind, right? And also all the people purchasing the digital products, they might be consuming all that information at once, but then maybe that is trailing behind. So there might be some foresight there where people are saying, yeah, maybe people are just not buying comics regularly as they used to, right?
Yeah,
And that might actually be the case. And
yeah,
so what you see is in the major publishing worlds are these event series where they're trying to reform themselves. There's a new major story arc happening. There's something new that's coming that will try to drive you back to purchasing your weeklies or monthlies. Will that always work? I don't know. You see the Absolute series, Absolute Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. Uh, that seems to be working really well. Whereas some of these instances, they don't necessarily work very well. If you're talking about New 52 or whatever it is, those kind of things don't necessarily work very well. So it might be hit or miss, and you might see companies taking bigger swings, trying to get people back to purchasing weeklies. And that could lead to some cool innovations, but it also could lead to some weird, bizarre elseworlds that tend to go off to nowhere. You know what I mean?
I was all in with the new 52. Like you know what it is. I always believe, oh, this could be the real status quo until the next status
Mm-hmm.
quo changes. And hey, man, Superman could wear boots. Why not? And I totally got over that one. But I understand it's always an event thing. I remember when the Ultimate Universe first came out, how it was like game changing, and it stayed for a very long time. And you don't want to see it fade away, but then you're kind of like, man, it's really hard to sustain it. I'm not saying comic books were dirt cheap, but I remember going after school with a couple bucks and come home with a small stack. And now you have to be very judicious when, the comic book store calls you and say, hey, look, man, you have it coming a month. So your pull is now $150. You're like, oh crap.
What?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
And then you find yourself doing things that aren't really helpful, like trade waiting for indies, which you shouldn't really do if you want to support a storytelling. So I just want to see your perspective on that, because I mean, you're a nerd like myself, so it's always cool.
No, I appreciate the question. I think it's fascinating, and it's an interesting topic, and yeah, I think we go back to advertising, right? I mean, publishers are having trouble offsetting the costs, right? So that's why those costs start to creep up, and you get $5-6 an issue. When I was a kid, it was $75, 75 cents an issue, rather, right? But every other page was an ad, which annoyed me back then, but it's fascinating now. But it's like, so there's trade-offs there, right? So it's very, very difficult, and people, big brands don't necessarily want to advertise in comic books. They want to advertise in the movies or in the digital space or those kind of things. So it's very, very difficult.
I can imagine the synergistic ads have increased, right? Like, check it out on Max on DC books or Disney Plus on the Marvel books. So as we wind down this year in 2024, as a creator, you may have some expectations and projections for your channel and your platform. What do you want to accomplish for your brand?
Ideally, I'd love to engage with my audience more, or have my audience engaging more. So it's an up and coming brand, right? I've only done 10 episodes. It's been around for, I think, 3 months now. But I have a lot of historical success in other entertainment ventures that I've done in the past. So I know this takes time to build up. What I would love to see, and I've seen the likes, I'm seeing subscribes. I would love to see more comments, more interaction with my group, have them sort of dictate what my next episode would be, because that would be great. I've had comments where people say, hey, try this episode issue, try this that issue, but I would really love to be able to just say, okay, you guys are all talking about this issue, so let me do it. I'll do a deep dive, and whether it's a modern one like an Absolute, which I have somewhere, I haven't read them yet, or it's something from 1967, I have no problems at least trying to find them, or deep diving into them if I have them. So that's really my goal for next year.
Hey, if you got time, because I know I'm the only person going to ask for this. I love the run that Batwing had. The last one, because I was a big Darwyn Cooke fan, rest in peace. And so the covers were like almost like the Saul Bass kind of thing, and it was like modern. And so I bought those like religiously. I thought that was way better sidekick than Night Runner, which I don't know if you ever met Kyle Higgins. I went to school with him, in grad school with him. So it was, anyway, that's my request. I want Batwing, baby. Anyone will be fine. So right. Everyone on New Amsterdam Radio, we have a little bit of a department, kind of a rapid fire situation. Are you down to play, sir? Please say yes. If you say no, because
sure. Go for it.
As a creative, do you believe in days off, and how do you spend them, if you do?
Yeah. Days off are important. So my days are so I'm a big talker of days off, but yeah, you have to organize yourself, and that also means organizing your days off. So yes, I fully believe that days off, cat naps when you can, and spending time with your loved ones definitely helps the creative process.
Yeah. Okay. How often do you get one of those?
Not enough. Not enough. That's for sure. I am a master at the 15-minute cat nap, though. I can nail that down. So
Oh
there you
yeah,
go.
so you must be about my age, right? Early 40s, late 30s, early 40s.
I mean, I'm 46. Yeah,
There you
so
go.
there you
Yep.
go.
I need 9 minutes. I'm fine. uh, what would you say is on your bucket list?
Oh man, my bucket list. I definitely
Actually, your
want.
travel bucket list. I'm sorry, your travel bucket list. Is the question we asked.
Oh,
So
my
if you were to
travel.
travel,
So
yeah.
okay, that was odd because I was gonna say travel. So I definitely want to go back to New Zealand. So I had the pleasure of being able to go to New Zealand
Oh wow.
back in 2005 or four, and it was an amazing, amazing trip. I would love to go back there. I also want to check out that those statues, those DC statues. I don't know if they're in Boston. I forget where they are exactly. But there's a GL statue. I know I think there's a Superman one or something like that out in the States. So I definitely want to check out those as well. Those are on my top two bucket lists right now.
Wow. I love the fact that's very, very short. uh, besides comic books,
Mm.
everyone collects something. What do you collect?
So I have a very, very large amount of shot glasses from different places. I had to actually put the shot glass collection on hold because I was running out of space for them. And so I have shot glasses from, all the known places you'd get shot glasses from, but also as friends started to travel around the world and they knew I was into this, they would actually bring me back shot glasses. So I have shot glasses from like Bali, Indonesia, and like Ireland, and all these great places that I've never been.
Yeah.
But I have them all, and they're lovely. And I have some really weird ones too. Like the weirder ones, the better. So yeah, those are pretty fun.
What usually goes in the glass? Huh.
Dust, because I had them up on a shelf. But yeah,
It's
so
sure nice to look at. I'm like, yeah, it's a good shot
yeah,
glass.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Then I had to put them away, and now it's like, oh, okay, stop collecting for now until I have space.
Just go straight for the bottle, man. I hear you.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
do you have a personal motto, or an axiom, or a saying you tell yourself to hype yourself up?
I do, and it's go forward. Go forward for many different reasons. So, go forward in my life, meaning not necessarily don't look back, but no matter what obstacles are in front of you, and if you have to stop for a moment, then stop for that moment, but try to always be moving forward. And that means in your life, in your career, in your skill set, in your friends, the group, and whatever it is. I have
Yeah.
it tattooed on my arm right here, but it is tattooed in ancient Gallifreyan from the language from Doctor Who. I don't know if you're
Okay.
a Doctor Who fan at all.
I'm aware of it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but it says "go forward" in that language, and so that is my life motto.
Kind of a sidebar. I haven't gone to Doctor Who because I'm afraid of it. And I, what I mean by that is like most people, I got reacquainted or acquainted with the Ninth Doctor, but I was
Mhm.
like, wait, that's already the ninth one. Whoa, oh, whoa, 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 whoa! I just didn't get into it. But is it easy to get into,
Yeah.
or is it like way too
So
much lore?
yeah, absolutely. You can get into starting in the 2005 series, which is the Ninth Doctor. You can definitely get into that. Think of the classic Doctor Who as classic Star Trek. So I don't know if you're into Star Trek at all,
I went
but
backwards. I got into Discovery
yeah,
first, and then went backwards.
there you go. So you've already done it. So if you decide to watch classic Doctor Who, you have 27 years of Doctor Who to watch. But A, not all the episodes still exist, so that's fine. But B, you don't necessarily have to watch every episode from 27 years to be caught up on everything. You could actually, I'm sure there's tons of recommendations on like historical Doctor Who's, which ones should I watch?
Yeah,
And then just get a basic understanding and also a basic understanding in your head that these shows were made on a wing and a prayer. So just like the classic Star Trek series, even more so, there's wobbly sets and funky special effects and that kind of and crummy dialogue. But
right.
if you can go back and appreciate that, that's fine. But if you want to start with decent Doctor Who, you start in 2005 until like the modern era, definitely.
Yeah. I about Doctor Who. I was at Comic Con, which is like 2 hours from me. I live in Los Angeles, so it's like 2 hours
Oh,
away.
lucky you.
A couple of
Yeah.
years ago, and there was a little girl I mean, she had to be like 5, but she was dressed as I guess it was Weeping Angels from Doctor Who,
Hmm.
like the ones like
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
ones that are like covering their face, but they're not. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
people were freaked out. And I'm like, it's just a kid. What's the big deal? Yeah, a couple of links later, I didn't sleep that night, so it looked
Yeah. Yeah. No,
interesting, but I didn't thought that I was too late for me. You know what I mean?
yeah, no. Weeping Angels are they're a newer creation.
Yeah,
They came from a one-off episode called Blink, which is an interesting episode because it's a Doctor Light episode, and what that is an episode that doesn't really feature the Doctor or his companion, but is in the Doctor Who world, and came about when the two primary actors were working on another episode and the block they needed to film, and so they came up with a Doctor Who light episode, and that's kind of been a tradition going forward, where almost once a season there's an episode that doesn't really feature the Doctor very much,
yeah.
and those are often highlights because they're able to like really stretch and go and do something really funky,
Oh
and
yeah.
so that's a really really great episode.
Yeah, the Flash did that on CW. It was like, "Where's the Flash?" Oh, he sprained his ankle
Yeah.
this week. You're like, "What?"
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
How did that happen? I remember
He's
that.
on vacation. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, while on the subject, because I got you here. Torchwood, recommend, not recommend?
I love Torchwood. I mean, Torchwood is like a little bit more for geared towards adults.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little bit of a shock value there in some of those scenes and what you're going to see, especially if you know Doctor Who. But it's short, it's punchy. It was a lot of fun for sure.
Wow, I gotta add it to the list. Like same
Yeah.
with Star Trek. For Star Trek, for a long time, I didn't want to get into it because by the time I was a kid, it was already next gen into Deep Space Nine. But
Hmm.
I was stuck in a hotel room in Europe, and because I went to Europe with no money and I was broke, so I
Yeah.
couldn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Which is like the most torturous way to go to Europe. Like, wow, Italy, can't leave the house at all. And so I binged Discovery. I became a fan, and then I kind of went
Hmm.
backwards. So I guess that was kind of like it needed something to be happening catastrophically to do that. But the
There you
same
go.
thing, I thought there was too much lore there for me. But of course, they kind of fill you in over time.
Hmm.
Lastly, this is the most difficult question we ask everyone on the show. What is your favorite junk food?
Oh man. Favorite junk food? I'd have to say chocolate bars. I don't know. You guys call them candy bars. I like chocolate bars. Like,
My parents are
Twix.
Commonwealthers. I get British English.
Hey. So
Sweet
yeah, so
biscuits and all
like
that. Smarties.
there you go. Smarties, yeah. Yeah, chocolate bars like, Twix or Arrow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like just plain old chocolate chip cookies. They cannot be in the house. So otherwise they disappear.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, those are my favorite snacks.
Well, there you go. Well, Mike, I love the chat to be able to chat with you about you and your channel and what you're planning to do and really preserve the art form for the next generations or next YouTube generations. If someone's listening and they want to connect with you or follow the page, how they go about doing that?
Yeah, you just go onto YouTube and search "Read the Freaking Comics." You'll see it. It'll pop up. You can message me anytime. My email is there as well. And yeah, would love to chat with any like-minded fans. Absolutely.
Great. Now I'm done being civil. The problem with Batman is his fan. Oh, with prep time, he can beat anybody with prep time. Are you kidding me?
I gotta love the Bat. Come on, he's so cool. I don't know. I love him. But hey,
No, I
each
get
his own.
I get clowned for the classic the parallax yellow impurity thing all the time for Green Lantern people. So do have some rate the podcast for creators. We'll be back next week. Thank you.